First question, what was the atmosphere like in the new ballpark on opening day, April 6, 1992? Was there a particular energy in there?
It was unbelievable. I mean, it was like a playoff game experience. We had if I remember right, we had like a scrimmage game with I can't remember who it was. It might have been the Pirates like a day or two before opening day, and there was like 35,000 here for like a scrimmage game. And then, of course, opening day came in 92, and, of course, it was packed 45, 46,000, whatever it was. And, yeah, man, it was just like, it was something that it's hard to describe. It almost reminds me of when Cal broke Lou Gehrig's record in 95. It almost felt like that in 92. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we had 3 or 4 consecutive years of sellouts here. Every home game was sold out. So it spoiled you as a ball player to know that you were going to come here and play in front of 45 or 46,000 every night.
Was that something you were expecting going in, the energy?
Yeah, I felt like it, because you got to remember, in 92 when this ballpark opened, there were no Nationals at the time. There were no Ravens at the time. So the only thing Baltimore fan base had was baseball. That was king around here at the time. And so we had a feeling, our team was going to be pretty good that year in 92. We had a feeling the fan base was going to come out and support a brand new ballpark. And man, when I walked into this ballpark, and we got to see it before opening day, we came over and kind of got to walk around a little bit, but it was special compared to Memorial Stadium. And I loved old Memorial Stadium because that's the first time I ever pitched in the big leagues with an old Memorial Stadium. And so I loved that ballpark. But when you stepped into this one, it was like, wow, like this is totally different.
So what made it wow?
I think the warehouse, where the ballpark sits, the Babe Ruth stories of Babe growing up around here, the B&O warehouse that we're sitting in right now, just the difference of all the old cookie cutter ballparks where everything's the same. It's the same distance down the left field, right field line, left center, center field. It all looks the same, just the old round kind of ballparks. This ballpark was obviously different. You got the big warehouse in here. You had the big wall over in right field where it is right now. And it was just a different kind of ballpark. It was not symmetrical at all. It was kind of nooks and cricks and valleys and whatever in the home run fence. I was like, this is really cool. This is a different look than your average ballpark that you just walk into and it feels like everybody else's ballpark. I think another thing that made this place so special is how close the fans are to the field. Old Memorial push back a little bit. But when there's 45 or 46,000 in this place and the fans are sitting on top of you, like I get goosebumps just talking about it. Like it can make the hair on your head stand up. And that's what made it pretty special is the fan base was just sitting right on top of you.
So what was the first thing you noticed when you first walked in this building that you realized this is a special ballpark?
Probably the clubhouse. Because you're used to old Memorial Stadium where it's a little small, like a lot of the clubhouses were, then all of a sudden you walk into a big, huge clubhouse where there's big screens, TVs everywhere. Everything was just different. The batting tunnels, the pitching mounds, as far as the indoor facilities, everything about this place was a little bit different. And then you looked out, of course, out in left center field and where the bullpens were, they weren't on the field, they were kind of tucked away a little bit. So I felt like most everything, and I was a young guy. This was only, I think I was, 23 years old, I guess. And so I hadn't been in a ton of big league ballparks, but when I stepped into this one, I knew it was pretty special.
Yeah. Your expectations of the ballpark, did it live up to the real thing, or did it exceed it?
I think it exceeded it. You heard a lot about it, and they started building it in 1989. And we would see the diagrams, and you could go kind of look at what it was going to be like, but you never really know until you step into it. But for me, it exceeded everything I'd ever seen because I'd been to a few big league ballparks, but when you stepped into this one, you realized it was pretty different from the beginning. And then you start talking about the history and where the ballpark was and how they put the warehouse into it and little different things that they did. It's a ballpark, simply put, that has stood the test of time. There's been other organizations that's built 2 ballparks since this one was open. I think the Rangers have built 2 since this one was built. But because this one was built the way it was, and I remember Larry Lucchino, who was the president at the time, he kind of had the idea of doing something a little bit different, a little different kind of ballpark than what everybody else had, and that was a good call, obviously, because this place is going to stand the test of time. And I mean, you always have upgrades, and the Orioles are currently doing some things right now with the scoreboard and some other things that are going on that you upgrade over time. But when you talk about a ballpark that opened up in 92 and the year that we're in now, it's pretty cool how this ballpark has stood the test of time.
And this was your 3rd opening day, I believe. How did the energy of the crowd compare to the previous 2 and the ones afterward?
Well, opening days are always special, right? No matter, it's a sense of a newness, I guess. Everybody has a chance. Everybody feels that. I think the fan bases feel that. And so all opening days are special in their own way, because even in Memorial Stadium, it was a sellout in Memorial Stadium for opening day. But what made this ballpark different was our team was pretty good. We were a little bit above 500 team, but what made it special was every day. Every day felt like opening day here, because the sellouts just kept coming, whether it was a Monday night playing the Milwaukee Brewers or whatever night it was a sellout every night, and that's what I remember about this ballpark.
Did you feel that the fans embraced the new ballpark quickly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we had that scrimmage game a few days before and 35,000 people showed up, I went, they're kind of into this, and you thought they would, because the newness of something. First of all, anytime there's something new, then you talk about the history of the Baltimore Orioles and the great history of the great ball players, and the Boog Powells and the Brooks Robinsons and the Frank Robinsons. This fan base in Baltimore is pretty special. And look, the Nationals came along and it changed a little bit, and the Ravens, which is football, obviously not baseball, but still, people have to pick and choose now, with their money and what games they want to come to and all those kind of things. But it was different then than it is now. But I'm pretty happy where our fan base is right now too.
So it felt pretty natural. There was no awkwardness going from Memorial to Camden for the fans.
No, it was. Yeah, I think they were excited to come. And there was nothing wrong with Memorial, although it was just an older ballpark. And it kind of set away from everything else. This was kind of tucked downtown a little bit, so it was different. But I don't think the fan base has had a problem with getting to the ballpark. They put the rail system in, people could come in by train too, buses, whatever. And so there was a lot of different options to be able to get to the ballpark. But I think the fan base adapted to Camden Yards, just perfectly.
Okay. When you first walked out of the locker room on opening day and you walked out, you saw the crowd, what was your initial reaction? Wow. That was my first reaction. When Rick Sutcliffe, who's a good friend of mine, was in my wedding, he pitched game one here and threw a complete game shutout. And I remember when they took the field to go out for the first inning, the roar of the crowd, and of course the O's, when you sing the national anthem, you could probably hear it back in Pennsylvania from how loud it was. That's how loud it was. And I was like, man, this is really, really cool. As a ball player, you try not to get caught up in all the other stuff, because you got to have this tunnel vision to be able to compete and keep your mind where it needs to be. But part of you sat back and went, this is cool. This is a really cool ballpark. Did you get to talk to Rick Sutcliffe before, during, after the game? He started that day.
I talked to him the day before. Rick was one of those guys, you didn't talk to him the day of the ball game. That was his day. I talked to him after the game, and I said, man, what was that like? And of course, Rick played the playoffs, got the playoffs with the Cubs, won a Cy Young with the Cubs. And he said, Big Ben, he said, that was the most electric experience of my entire big league career. That fan base, of course, he threw a complete game shutout. And then I was pitching game 3. And I followed right. He said, now it's your turn. And then we got shut out in game 2, and then I threw a complete game shutout in game 3, And so that's what I remember about that.
When did you learn he was starting?
When we went and got Rick Sutcliffe, there was, I was young, Mike Messina was very young, and I think the front office, Roland Heeman, Larry Lucchino, realized that this staff at the time in '92 was a very young staff. Pete Harnish, Kurt Schilling. We needed a veteran guy, a guy that's been there before, has done that before, had a lot of experience. And so they went and got Rick Sutcliffe. And I knew that when Rick came over here, he was going to start opening day, because he'd been an opening day starter with the Cubs. He'd done everything, playoffs, and like I said, he won a Cy Young. And there's a funny story about that. Halfway through spring training, Johnny Oates had already told Rick Sutcliffe, you're pitching opening day. But the story goes, and Rick tells the story, that he goes into Johnny Oates' office about 3 weeks into spring training. He goes, hey, you got the wrong guy for opening day. He said, I watched Ben McDonald and Mike Messina pitching. They're a lot better than I am. One of those guys need to be starting opening day. And they say, no, Sut, you're going to start opening day because of the experience, but your job is to pitch here, but your job is to help grow these 2 young pitchers. And we had a lot of young pitchers on that mound, on that team.
So even though you didn't start, were you charting pitches during the game?
Sure. Yeah, that's what you do, as a starting pitcher when you're going to face that same opponent And of course, Rick was right-handed, 6'7", like I'm 6'7". So I wanted to really pay attention to the Cleveland hitters, you know, to like see what they're doing, see what their approach is, because it kind of gave me an idea how I wanted to go out and attack each hitter. So that's kind of was our job the day before, is always to chart pitches. And I always used to go up in the clubhouse and watch it on TV, because of the center field view, you can see the location of the pitches better than you can sitting in the dugout. You can really see where the balls are going and how they're swinging. So I always charted our pitchers from inside, but then when we would come hit, of course, I'd go out and support the team and be in the dugout. As soon as we go back out to pitch, I'd go back upstairs and do my charting.
So when you eventually started, that was game 3, you got 9 strikeouts, 0 earned runs, 112 pitches. Was there anything you learned from that first game, watching Rick Sutcliffe pitch?
Yeah, the way I remember Kenny Lofton was their leadoff hitter, and the way he pitched Kenny Lofton, and then they had Glenn Allen Hill. They had a couple of big time. They had Albert Bell, who was a big power hitter. So yeah, I always learn, and then it helped me because I wasn't pitching game 2. So the next day I was able to talk to Sutcliffe, and we talked a little bit about how he attacked each hitter, what he thought that I should probably do, and how I was going to have success against them. You know, so yeah, I mean, sharing information when you're young and you got a veteran guy like him, when he talks, you listen.
And when you walked out in that third game, obviously this wasn't opening day, but it was a very charged atmosphere. What did you notice about it?
The electricity in the air. I was trying not to be too emotional to go out there. Like, I mean, you're so amped up. Like, and baseball is not like football, and it's not like basketball. Sometimes football players can get super amped up and it still works out. As a baseball player, if you get amped up, sometimes things go a little bit wrong. You get out of your comfort zone in some ways. And so that's what I was guarding against. But more importantly, I remember one thing: just get through the first inning. That's what I kept telling myself. Navigate the first inning and things will start to calm down a little bit, because I was super nervous. 46,000 people in the ballpark. Rick had just thrown a shutout and we needed to win the series. They beat us in game 2. And so there was some pressure to go out there, but there's always a little bit of pressure to perform, But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed the pressure of it. I enjoyed pitching game 3 here and just being a part of all this.
Okay, and then reeling it back to opening day a bit, do you have a particular memory, a story that really stands out to you that you remember from that day?
The one thing, and we talked about it, I remember the national anthem and the O's, how loud it was. That's what really stood out to me. I remember the excitement in the ballpark. Again, opening day is always exciting, but when it's a new ballpark, a new team, a team that had expectations, there was a lot of excitement that led up to that, in a really good year. And of course, anytime you get to play with Cal Ripken Jr. and seeing him begin to chase that streak that he was on, and would later pass up Lou Gehrig, a few years later, that was really cool just to be a part of it.
Any sort of fan interaction, jersey signings?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty common. All players, right after batting practice, you'd always stop and sign a few autographs on the way to into the clubhouse. So yeah, I mean, the fans were super excited about opening day, like the players were.
What about the media? What was your reaction to the amount of media, diplomats in attendance, cameras?
I don't remember if it was opening day or not, but I remember, yeah, it was opening day. I think it was it Bill Clinton that came in? We had President come in. We had Queen Elizabeth at the old ballpark for opening day one time. And so, yeah, you never know who's going to show up. There's always celebrities, presidents. And again, that was the only game around. There was no national, so all the presidents used to make the way. Bush was here at one time. Then Clinton came in. So we had celebrities. I mean, Sutcliffe had Barkley come in that year. Jim Kelly came in, the famous football player. So there's always somebody bebopping through the clubhouse, which is always fun.
It was George H.W. Bush here on opening day. Did you get to meet him?
Yeah, sure did.
What was that like?
It was cool. Every day you get to meet a president, right? And whether you liked him or not, it was pretty cool just to hang out with him. Like Queen Elizabeth when she, was at the old ballpark when Clinton came. It's cool. That's when you realize you're in the big leagues, when the president starts showing up, and so that was fun.
Were you nervous at all for that, meeting the president?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was more nervous about all the Secret Service around him than I was anything. Those guys are packing, man. And so, it was cool. It was cool.
So what exactly did you learn from Sutcliffe that helped you in your first start?
Rick was probably the most important person in my career, my development as a pitcher and a person. And a young guy that was trying to get his footing in the big leagues, and Rick came along, and there was an older guy that I could actually bump things off of, both about baseball, about life, marriage, whatever. And so he was so important. That's why we and him became and still are really good friends. And he was in my wedding a few years later. I learned a lot from him on the field, how to conduct yourself on and off the field, which was important for me as a young guy at the time. So that's why I always talk about having veteran leadership and having older guys around that've kind of been there and done that and can give you some advice. You know, trust comes with that first, and there was a trust factor with him that I really, you know, we became friends for whatever in spring training and really stuck together, did a lot of things together. And so I trusted him in a lot of ways and the things that he said.
Are you two still in contact?
Yes, all the time. All the time.
Awesome. Your first time pitching at Camden Yards, I feel like I've asked this, but I'm going to try to go a bit more in depth. What was that like? What was that experience like? Was it different from your opening days or first times pitching at Memorial?
Yeah. I think the crowd was different. We were playing a good team in Cleveland, but I remember getting through the first couple of innings and we scored 1 or 2 runs. I had a 2-0 lead, and then I started thinking, I got a chance to do what Sutton did. He threw a shutout just 2 days earlier, and shutouts don't happen every day. You know, they hardly ever happen anymore. Nobody goes 9 innings anymore, it feels like. You know, maybe 4 or 5 times a year somebody does. But yeah, I mean, I remember that about it and wanting to, because I'd coming off some injuries in 91. I've been nicked up. I had an oblique issue and stuff, and so I wanted to have a good year. I wanted to be the guy that lived up to the potential of being a first-round pick, being the first pick overall. All those things are sitting on your mind when you go out there, you know, and I always felt like the first inning is always the toughest one to navigate through it. I mean, you're emotional, like we talked about. You're facing the other team's best hitters right out of the chute, and so you got to be pretty much on your game. And once I got through the first inning and put a 0 on the scoreboard, I said, okay, I feel pretty good about where we are right now.
Speaking of that mindset, taking the field, stepping out onto the mound for the first time, what was going through your mind?
Try to slow the game down. That's what I always tell myself. Don't get in a hurry. Don't try to get too fast. Stay within yourself. Don't be too emotional. Don't try to overthrow. Just all those things that people tell you. And that's the thing about people can tell you and lead you a lot of different ways to tell you how to have success, what you need to do to have success. But it never really sinks in as a ball player until you go out there yourself and you experience the highs and the lows, the successes and the failures. And then you're able to, yeah, that's what he was talking about. This is the situation he was talking about. So it's cool to have guys, and it matters, that can kind of tell you. But the biggest thing for me in the growing up process was learning on my own and getting myself in tough situations, working out of them, having success, failing, learning, taking a step forward, a step back, those kind of things. It's just a growing process at this level.
What about the field itself? We've had a few people tell us that the playing surface at Camden compared to Memorial was night and day. What's your take on that?
Yeah, there was always an internal war with the hitters and the pitchers about this ballpark. And we as pitchers wanted the infield grass to be high because it slowed the ball down. And of course the hitters wanted the infield grass to be low so the ball got through the infield faster and they got more base hits. And our argument always was with Brady Anderson and Cal was, it's 364 out there to the left center field. This is a small ballpark. You know, the ball flies out of this ballpark. Just go look at the numbers. I said, it's a home run ballpark. Can we have some advantage? Can we grow the grass higher? But the track was different. The grass was different. It was a little bit thicker here. I didn't feel like the infield was quite as fast as it was at Memorial Stadium. But I felt like Memorial Stadium was a better pitcher's ballpark because of the dimensions. It was a deeper ballpark than what this one originally was.
So who ended up winning that debate?
Who do you think won? The Iron Man. The Iron Man won, Cal Ripken. He had a little more pull than we did. And so the grass stayed cut low. And the fences were short too. So everybody said when we moved the fences in a couple years ago here, I went, ballpark's been unfair for 30 years. Can it be fair for 3 years? And then we moved it, not all the way back. It's kind of in the happy medium out in left field now from where it used to be. But it was really, really short out there in left center field.
Yeah, give me 2 more questions. How was warming up pregame at Camden different from Memorial? Did you have more amenities here?
Well, again, the fans at Memorial, you were kind of tucked away in an area where the fans could see you, but they weren't that close to you. And where it is right now is where it was back in '92 when we opened up, and the fans were literally, 60 feet from you. And so you were kind of in a little zone right there, right around the fan base, and so people could sit up top and look down. So it was just a light, more intimate, I guess, for the fans, which is really cool. They're sitting on top of you, but for ball players, it's an adjustment. It's an adjustment to get used to. But every ballpark's a little. You go to Fenway Park, and they can almost grab your arm. They're so close to you while you're pitching. So you get used to anything over time.
Okay, and then as a pitching staff between you and Sutcliffe, you guys pitched 2 shutouts in the opening series.
Mm-hmm.
What went into that, and do you feel like that set a tone for what was to come at this part?
I think so. I mean, you want to play follow the leader, and there's always competition, friendly competition, and whatever the guy before you does or a couple of guys before you, you want to continue to set that tone and do that. And Sutcliffe went out and set the tone throwing a shutout in game 1. So I wanted to go out there and do the same thing. And I think that's always the mindset of a starting pitcher. Even in today's game, where they're not throwing that many complete games anymore, the mindset is to go out there and put zeros on the scoreboard and to try to finish what you start. That was always my mindset, and I learned that from Rick. He said, the idea is to finish what you start. If you want to throw the first pitch, you throw the last pitch of the ball game. That was the idea. And it didn't always work out, but that had to be the goal every time when you went out there, is to try to dominate the ball game. And that's what we tried to do when we went on the mound.
Okay. Josh, you're up.
Thank you. Yes, sir. All right, seamless transition.
Nobody noticed, don't worry.
That's right.
Yeah, so kind of, I heard you talk about Memorial a little bit, but just kind of, what were some of the charms of it, would you say?
The history of it. The history of it to me was what stuck out to me. Remember, I came from down south around Baton Rouge, Louisiana, growing up at a time where we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have the apps on our phones. We didn't have I couldn't watch American League games. I got drafted by the Baltimore Orioles out of LSU. And I could name 2 players on the Baltimore Orioles. I knew Greg Olson, the closer, because I played against him at Auburn, and Auburn and LSU played in the SEC, and everybody knew the Iron Man, Cal Ripken Jr. That was the only 2 players I knew. I mean, we never saw an American League game unless it was on Monday Night Baseball at the time. And so I had to get used to doing that, of learning the players, learning the history of the Baltimore Orioles. But then you started thinking about, okay, the World Championships, Jim Palmer, Boog Powell, Brooks Robinson, Mike Belanger, Frank Robinson, and you started thinking about the great players that had played and put this uniform on. You realize you had expectations to live up to, and so that was cool. It was a history lesson for me in a lot of ways, because I grew up down south where all we got was, when we did get cable vision, was WTBS and WGN. So I grew up watching, there was no interleague play. So I grew up watching the Braves play. I grew up watching the Cubs play. I was a National League fan. I didn't know anything about the American League, and so it was fun. What I didn't know is people up here considered themselves Southern people too. Like people up in Baltimore, like we're Southern. I'm like, what? I know I'm Southern. I'm from Louisiana, but they consider themselves Southern people up here. And so Memorial was really cool. This is a blue collar town. This is the way I remember it. And the fan base showing up, supporting. And I remember Cal Ripken Jr. took me to the side when I first signed over. He said, be the first one in the ballpark every day, be the last one to leave, outwork everybody here, and this fan base will take to you. Whether you have success or not, they're gonna love you. And so that's what I always tried to do, like anybody else does, is come out and work hard and try to be the best that you can be. That's all you can do at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, with Memorial too, since it was an older stadium, just were there challenges with it, like the player amenities?
Not really, because remember, I came from college, and that's the first big league ballpark I'd ever been in. I thought it was wonderful. I thought, this is the greatest thing in the world. We're in a big league ballpark. And then you start traveling around and you're going, okay, yeah, these are some nicer ballparks here and there, but I was totally happy with it, because that's the only ballpark I ever knew. I'd stepped into Houston Astrodome when I was a kid, and that was the only big league ballpark I'd ever been in before I stepped foot at Memorial Stadium as a 21-year-old. And so I thought it was heaven until we moved into this one.
Yeah, and then once you did move into this one, what were the player amenities like here versus?
Just a lot better. I mean, everything about it was bigger and better. Like we talked about, the locker room was bigger and better. The training room was bigger and better. The dining area was bigger and better. Everything about it was just more modern, more 1990s, if you will. Just newer and bigger and better and more exciting. And like I said, the coolest thing about this place, I think, was the fan base being so close and right up on top of the action. I think that's what made it special.
Yeah, and when you're preparing for a game at Camden, like, what was the preparation like, or how did it differ from Memorial?
I think you prepare the same. You know, as a player, especially as a starting pitcher, you get into your routine. Call it superstition if you want to, or call it hard-headedness or whatever, but we all have a routine on how we prepare from day 1 to day 5 and the things that you do. You know, you pitch on day 1, day 2 is a leg workout day, day 3 is upper body and a bullpen day, day 4 is a rest day, day 5 you pitch again. So you get into a routine of how you want to go through every day and how much you're going to do. And so I didn't change anything about the ballpark at all. I knew it was going to be more exciting here because of the fan base and everybody showed up and it was going to be 45,000. You knew that, so that. But again, I think as a competitor and a ball player, you feed off both positive energy and negative energy. It was cool to go into Yankee Stadium and have 55,000 too, you know, or old Tiger Stadium that's not here anymore. I remember pitching opening day over there one time and they had 50-something thousand there. So, and it was negative energy, but as a competitor, I think you feed off either or. I think it keeps the juices flowing a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And were there any like quirks about Camden that you had to adjust to at all?
The warning track, and it's not like that anymore, but if you guys remember, the warning track all the way around was rubber. And you know, it's more of kind of what you see now around the league, where it's a little bit of dirt and kind of gravel mixed in with it. But I remember the warning track and knowing that when the ball would hit that rubber warning track, it was bouncing way into the stands. So that was something that kind of took me off guard the way they put that in. I don't think it stayed very long, and they realized it's probably not a good idea because every ball that would hit the track is bouncing into the stands. But I remember that specifically going, that's the first time I've ever seen a rubber warning track before, you know.
Yeah. And the dugout, as you probably remember, like, you guys were on the third base side of Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
The first base side, did that take any?
That was about the time that it used to be old school the home team was always in the third base dugout, always at every ballpark. And then about that time in the 90s, that started to change a little bit, that thought process, and you started to see more and more home teams go to the first base dugout. And so, yeah, that was a little bit different, a little bit of a transition, but it became, like I said, you can kind of get used to anything, and after about a week or two, about 10 games here, it felt like home.
And kind of going back to the planning process a little bit, you said that you guys would look at plans sometimes. I know you were a young guy at the time, but did they just talk to like any players at all about like what the clubhouse should look like, something like that?
I'm sure that, yeah, I do remember not talking to me because I was a younger player, but I know that they called Cal in, some veteran players, and just said, hey, what do you think about the locker room? What do you think? It was just a long process. It started in '89 when they started to build Camden Yards, but I think there was a lot of thought process that went into it. And I really think Larry Lucchino and others did a great job of trying to get as many opinions, as many as people as they could, because it's kind of like building a house. You know, you build your house and you live in it and you're happy with it and it's exactly what you wanted, but then 5 years later, you go, gosh, I wish I'd have done this. I saw somebody do this. I wish we'd have done this. And so I think they did their homework. And there's certain things about it that others went and really, this ballpark was the first of its kind, a different kind of, not a cookie cutter kind of ballpark. And then others started to follow very similar. You know, Jacobs Field in Cleveland kind of mimicked a little bit about the Orioles did. The Texas Rangers ballpark kind of mimicked a little bit about what the Orioles did. And so this one really was the one that kind of started all the newness and not so much cookie cutter ballparks, which is really cool. And the fact that it's still here today, honestly, and you go around, look at anybody, and when they talk about other players that come into here, current players that play for the Orioles, they still think this is one of the coolest ballparks around. Just because of the scenery, the warehouse, it's just different. You know, it's just a different look.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask, when you now travel to other newer ballparks, do you kind of see Camden Yards how it inspired other ballparks?
Oh, yeah. We saw it just a few years later. You know, when Cleveland built their new ballpark and Texas built their new ballpark, you could tell they took some of Camden Yards and what they did. And this was the first one that did it a little bit differently. Didn't want a cookie cutter ballpark. And then others followed and said, you know, that's a great idea. We've been making these same old ballparks for 100 years now. Let's make some different ballparks, you know. And so this is really cool that this was really the first one that kind of got it going. But you go around the league now, man, there's so many beautiful ballparks. PNC Park out in Pittsburgh, I mean, that's a beautiful ballpark to me. We get to go there every other year, and we did a series there last year, and that's a really cool, the background, seeing the bridge and the city back there. So there's a lot of cool ballparks out there, but for me, this one here, for a lot of different reasons, is still my favorite.
Yeah, and once you left the Orioles and played for the Brewers, did that stadium feel...
It was a travesty. It was travesty. Old County Stadium compared to Camden Yards, it was no comparables there. You know, the only good thing about Old County Stadium was it was a better pitcher's ballpark. It was a big ballpark with heavy grass. I loved pitching there, but like it was an older ballpark. It wasn't a newer ballpark like Camden Yards. So yeah, I felt like, oh my gosh, you know. But not to mention there was no dome on it then. And then the new ballpark they got in Milwaukee's got a dome when it's cold out. It got really cold in Milwaukee in March and April.
Yeah, I bet. And the bullpens at like Camden versus Memorial, were they different?
Yeah, but the bullpen here was elevated. The fans were a lot closer. The bullpen at Memorial was kind of tucked back behind the left center field wall, and you had an area back there where the fans really couldn't get, they weren't that close. They could see down, but they really couldn't get that close to you at Old Memorial. You know, Old Memorial obviously was a football stadium too at one point, so you could tell there was some extra space behind home plate. There's a bigger area out there. There's no wasted space here. That's what's pretty cool. I mean, they used every inch of this place, I feel like.
Yeah, and when you talk about how much you like the fans being close to it, did you almost feel more charged up and amped when you're...
Absolutely. I mean, you can hear everything. You know, when it's a lot of people, it's more of a buzz and a roar. You really can't tell, but every now and then you can hear people. But yeah, I mean, I lived off the energy and the emotion of fans, whether it was positive or negative. So I think as a competitor, you don't mind that. You know, you just got to figure out a way, and it takes time to be able to control your emotion and your energy to try not to do too much, you know, and get away from what you do best. And that's the biggest challenge with whether it's a plus ballpark for you as far as fan base in your favor or not in your favor. You got to be able to control your emotions.
Yeah. And did you keep any like keepsakes or mementos from opening day?
Yes, I do. In a scrapbook at home, my wife has her ticket and my mom and dad's tickets for opening day still. It says 1992, whatever it was, April the whatever on it, you know. So I kept that, and then somebody later, some years later, sent me the ticket stubs or the tickets to my first game here where I threw a shutout, and I kept those too, you know. And so, yeah, there's some pictures obviously, and we didn't have cell phones then, you know. It would have been a lot more, but I've got pictures in a scrapbook of 92 in the first year here.
Yeah, and a term that we've been hearing a lot is that it's an old-fashioned ballpark with modern amenities.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, because it did. That was the cool thing about it. They made it look like it'd been around a long time, but it was obviously brand new. And so I think that's what everybody fell in love with right away. It was just different. It was a different ballpark, and there really was never one built like this one before this, you know. And so they kind of went way back with some ideas of Forbes Field and some other fields way back when, and they kind of took a little piece of this, a little piece of that, and they've added it all together to a newer kind of ballpark, you know. But the fact that Babe Ruth grew up right around here was always a thrill. I was always a Babe Ruth fan, you know, and his legend and legacy and all those things and the things he accomplished, and the fact that he grew up right here around Baltimore, of course, the warehouse and all that kind of stuff is still, to me, what makes this place so special.
And if there's one thing that you want fans to remember from the opening of this ballpark, what would it be?
I would say, this is what I tell all the players over the years of coming back, and I think this is my 16th year of broadcasting here, is there's not a better ballpark in the country than this one right here when there's 45,000 people in it. It is the loudest ballpark there is because of where the fans sit and how passionate they are about baseball. And I hope all you guys get to experience sellout ballparks. That's what I always tell them, because I said, you can't beat this ballpark. And we've seen it the last couple of years. There were some down times, you know, 4 or 5 years ago when we were rebuilding. But man, starting in 23, the Orioles kind of turned the corner, 22, 23, and man, for the playoff games, although we hadn't won a playoff game the last couple of years, it's still been pretty loud in here, you know. And so this fan base is hungry for playoff baseball. They're hungry for wins. They're hungry for a World Series again. It's been a minute, you know, 1983. And so, yeah, the club's not off to a great start. We know that this year, but hopefully they're going to get this thing turned around.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Just kind of going back again to opening day tickets. Was it just your parents and your wife?
Yeah, it was my wife and my mom and my dad that came. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you remember how many like tickets they would like cap you guys at?
We used to get 6 tickets is what you got, and everybody got 6. But like if I was using my 6 and I needed 3 more, I could go to you and say, hey man, you using all your tickets tonight? And you're like, I used 3 of them, but I got 3. So you could share tickets like that, you know. And tickets were hard to get here then because everybody was showing up, you know. Everybody was showing up. The ballpark was always full. You know, there was a time 4 or 5 years ago that they were giving away tickets, you know, and it was hard to get extra tickets back in the day. But yeah, we figured out a way to do it.
Yeah, right on. And do you have any kind of memories from pregame on opening day? Like, did Johnny Oates speak to the team, or Eli Jacobs, or anybody?
No, I remember Johnny the day before we had a workout having a talk. But I mean, opening day I think they wanted us to be able to try to relax as much as you could. I remember when they opened the gates and we were taking batting practice, the fans just started just like a concert, man. They were just running into here, you know, and it just filled up from batting practice. And you could tell the excitement was starting to build, you know, and you could just tell it just felt different than the year before at Old Memorial Stadium, you know.
Yeah. And do you remember your first time seeing this warehouse? And your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I remember riding by and seeing it. I remember like they started construction here in '89. I remember I would ride by this area every now and then and just kind of wondering what it was going to be like and how long it was going to take to get ready. But what really hit home is when we stepped into it for the first time. There was no fans here or anything. It was like 3 days before the exhibition game that we had, and just came. I think I came over at Chris Hoyles and Rick Sutcliffe and was like, let's ride over to the ballpark and see what's going on, you know, and just come through and to step out and walk out to the mound. I was like, man, this is going to be pretty fun. This is going to be exciting, you know. And so I remember coming over early once or twice, just seeing what it looked like.
So was that planned when you guys just drove over?
It wasn't planned. No, we had an off day or something, and we just like, hey, we got in here a few days early. Let's go check it out. Let's go see what it looks like, you know. And I wanted to go see it, you know. And so I think the more you get familiar with something, the more comfortable you're in. And it's cool to ride by it and see it gradually go up, and all start to come together. Because, you know, there's a video somewhere, I think it was Randy Milligan, you know, hitting right here way before they even broke ground. Just somebody threw him a ball and he was hitting here before they started construction in '89. So to see it, you know, like I said, the little models they used to put up, and you kind of see where the clubhouse was, and they would point to this. That helped a little bit. Didn't do it justice though when you walked in.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, we in this warehouse talked to Paul Zalaska, if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and we talked about like his kind of office down there, looking onto the field. But for you, like the mound is your office.
Right.
So did you talk to Paul Zalaska about what you wanted the mound to feel like?
No, because I mean, pretty much every big league mound is supposed to be the same height. Everything's supposed to be the same, you know. Now, I wanted to get on the mound and get a feel for it myself, you know. So I walked out to the mound before opening day just kind of get a feel for it. But I mean, all the mounds are pretty standard. The height of it, all the dirt, everything's supposed to be just about the same. The college things were a little bit different. Every mound was a little different. But out here, everything is measured. In the big leagues, everything's supposed to be exactly the same, you know. So it felt fine to me. After the first start, threw a shutout, I was like, yeah, it's good. I'm good. Yeah.
Gotta feel good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. So, yeah, it held up well. It held up really, really well.